Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. I'm Scott Hambrick.
I'm Karl Shute.
And I've almost forgotten how to do this.
Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast.
Oh, yes, where today we will be talking about the article, Is Business Bluffing Ethical by Albert Z. Carr from the January 1968 issue
Harvard
of the
Business
Harvard
Review.
Business Review.
Yeah.
See, guys, it's been a month since we did one of these.
Yes. And
nothing's happened in that time, Karl, in that month.
No, absolutely nothing's happened, and certainly nothing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about this old article. Anything that coincides with current events is purely by accident.
Because everything is. It's just a game.
Right, and you should have known it was a game and not expected to be dealt with honestly.
That's what Carr tells us about business in this stupid article.
Well, you're telegraphing your reaction to it.
Yeah.
I had to read this business ethics class in grad school, and this was one of the articles that we read, and it's bugged me ever since.
Is this a well-worn little piece that people use in those classes, or?
Yeah, I think so.
It wasn't just peculiar to your class, you don't think?
Well, it was a very good class.
Yeah.
I'm blanking out on my professor's name, but thanks, old professor. It was a good class. But, I mean, I think this is probably the way lots of people think. So I'm going to read the first two paragraphs, and that might set the stage.
Yeah.
So, a respected businessman with whom I discussed the theme of this article remarked, with some heat, "You mean to say that you're going to encourage men to bluff? Why, bluffing is nothing more than a form of lying. You're advising them to lie." My image of Carr is like an old guy with the horn-rimmed glasses. I don't know what he looks like, but he writes like that.
He also writes like somebody who's never even run a lemonade stand, by the way.
Yeah, I agreed that the basis of private morality is a respect for truth, and that the closer a businessman comes to truth, the more he deserves respect. At the same time, I suggested that most bluffing in business might be regarded simply as game strategy, much like bluffing in poker, which does not reflect on the morality of the bluffer.
Okay. So, I want to repeat this. This is the article, Is Business Bluffing Ethical? You can find it anywhere on the internet, Harvard Business Review, January 1968. You should go read this thing right now. Just stop the tape. I want to tell you to stop listening to our show and just go read this. It's 15 pages of like 14-point text here that I printed out on my computer. You should go read this and then get all red-faced and everything, and then come back to your device and turn us on, and we'll talk about it.
But, some of our people who read it are going to say, that's right.
Mm-hmm. I have an answer for that. I think that'll come towards the end.
I was responding to this article in memes.
Well, that's
I'm just writing that. You've seen that yes meme where they have that head that just says yes. Why, you're advising them to lie. And I wrote yes. But when he writes private morality. Okay. What is morality? That's what I want to ask. And if we dive into that concept, morality, ethics, they both mean the same thing. In my opinion, I know in English people put shades of meaning on this, but they're both translations of each other.
See our episode on Alistair McIntyre's book, After Virtue.
Yes, and tell your friends to go listen to that one. Morality, what you ought to do. Let's go there. So it's what you ought to do. Okay? Let's look at the word ought. Ought is the past tense of owe.
It's an obligation.
Just like fraught is the past tense of freight. So you owe something. Whom do you owe it to?
Well, that's a good question. To whom it is due? Socrates?
Which might be?
It might be your customer. I think it could even be yourself.
Sure. Yourself, your customers, your spouse, your family.
Oh my God, Karl. Is it your stakeholders?
I know. Stakeholder theory.
I hate that shit so much.
I hate it too.
Why do you hate it?
Because it turns out everybody in the world works out to be a stakeholder.
Yeah, it puts everybody on equal footing when in fact that's not the case.
I think whereas in the mystical realm that might in fact be true, I actually think practically you can't run a business as if, some herder in Kamchatka, north of Vladivostok, is a stakeholder.
There is certainly something at stake for the janitor, but, maybe he doesn't get to set pricing.
I think private morality is probably a nonsense term.
Well,
but morality doesn't have to be universal because it can't be.
Ooh, that's a big claim, Karl. Shoot.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say anything.
Morality doesn't have to be universal because it cannot be.
It can't be because, Elder Zosima in the Dostoevsky book, The Brothers Karamazov, one of the greatest novels I've ever read. I won't make you do it on the podcast because it's 1,400 pages.
That's fine.
Elder Zosima is talking to Alyosha, and he, is that it right there?
No, I'm reading Don Quixote right now for my home group. Holy smoke.
I'm reading The Possessed, another cheerful Dostoevsky book, in my moments before I fall asleep. But Elder Zosima says we are all responsible for each other's sins. This is like a mystical Orthodox monk statement, which is probably true.
It's a koan.
Yeah, I think so. It's like pray without ceasing. It's true, I guess, but how do you do it? Mm-hmm. I think it is true. But on the other hand, I'm not very much responsible for the sins of that goat herder in Vladivostok.
You may not be responsible as in you grabbed him by the hand and made him steal that bubble gum at the candy store. But we all sort of pay a price for that, ultimately.
Yeah.
So in that way, we end up being responsible. You see, responsible is not a very good word. It doesn't mean enough, or it means too many things, right?
It's probably a better word in Russian.
Yeah. There's always better word in Russian.
Should that be my next project, learn Russian?
For sure.
To fill the hours?
Yeah, do that after we get done with this podcast. Not this episode, like the whole damn thing. Yeah, so I'm going to come back to this stupid Carr guy. Wait a minute. Am I interrupting you?
No.
Carr he's not a great writer. And I was saying he's stupid, that's not fair. He's not a great writer. What does morality mean for him? What does ethical mean for him? What does lying mean for him? What does bluffing mean for him? They're a little bit slippery here, and so it's never
He's
sure.
Not careful.
No, he's not.
Socrates would have stopped him right here.
Yes.
And said, he would have said to him, Albert, Mr. Carr, you are obviously a person of rare wisdom, and I, who have been searching for wisdom my entire life, am very fortunate to have met you. Great Albert, could you please tell me what morality is? And then they would go off for 40 pages, and then he would say, and what is private? And everyone would get annoyed and walk away, and Albert would probably walk away and not get to the answers, which are crucial to the whole thing. The theory is that there's a private morality, and then there's a game morality, a business morality, and that the two are separate, and that they should be separate, and you shouldn't let the one interfere with the other.
Yes.
That's a big claim.
Yeah. Yeah, Carr, check my math here. Carr thinks it's okay to do what he calls bluffing, which is really, for Carr, I think in this essay, bluffing is any deceptive or information withholding technique that would be to your own advantage in a business transaction. It's not just poker bluffing. It's kind of broad for him here. But he thinks it's acceptable to do that as long as it is within the acceptable social agreement of what the quote-unquote business game is. Like corporate espionage, he's not okay with that, but not telling somebody, you tell them you can meet the deadline even though you know damn good and well that you can't meet the deadline.
Right, because otherwise you wouldn't get the sale.
Right.
I think he actually is for corporate espionage, as long as you're within the law.
Well, yeah, he says that too.
So it ends up being whatever the law says you can do. Some of his examples are...
Let's just go to paragraph 3, where he quotes Henry Taylor.
Sure.
He gives lots of examples. I quoted Henry Taylor, the British statesman, who pointed out that, quote, falsehood ceases to be falsehood when it is understood on all sides that the truth is not expected to be spoken, unquote. An exact description of bluffing in poker, diplomacy, and business. I think that's utter bullshit, if he believes that and I don't, and he and I can't reconcile, we're kind of done.
Falsehood ceases to be falsehood when it's understood on all sides that the truth is not expected to be spoken. There's a Solzhenitsyn quote on that. They were lying. We knew they were lying. They knew that we knew they were lying, and yet they continued to lie.
This is metaphysically gross. Falsehood ceases to be falsehood when it is understood on all sides that the truth is not expected to be spoken. So he acknowledges there's a falsehood, and he notices that he acknowledges that there's a truth in the statement, but he says the falsehood isn't falsehood as long as a truth exists. But the falsehood becomes true. It's just
no. Let me help Albert out. Let me help Mr. Carr out. When I tell you a joke, I went into a bar the other day and I saw, and I didn't go to a bar the other day.
Right.
You don't expect that I'm telling you the truth. You don't complain about my joke because it's a lie. But I don't think it's a lie because it's not intended to deceive. A falsehood that is not intended to deceive can be a joke.
Okay.
But in this case, these are falsehoods that are intended to deceive. And you couldn't even have everybody telling falsehoods without somebody thinking that it's supposed to be true. Let's get Kantian. If everybody told lies, telling lies would no longer work. So in order to get this business game to work, where everybody's lying, which he says is okay because everybody expects it to be a lie, no, you can't have everybody expect it to be a lie. There have to be suckers.
Right. I'm a sucker. I'm having some construction done right now. The guy says, I'll be there Monday.
Scare quotes, Monday.
Right. He didn't tell me which Monday. he didn't tell me 8 a.m. I expect the truth to be spoken. Carl would probably tell me I'm a rube and I don't understand business.
He might do that. I wonder if he ever had a house built.
Well, he was an economist. I looked him up. He was a writer, an economist, and a consultant to 2 presidents. During World War II, Mr. Carr was an assistant to the chairman of the War Production Board and later served on White House missions to England, China, Japan, and other countries. He worked on the problem of resolving Germany's reparations payment. No, he never had a house built. He never had a home. He never ran a lemonade stand, would be my guess. My dad would say he doesn't know shit from fat meat, but he wrote this article.
And so he gives some examples. So I'm going to go down he's talking to his friend. I wonder if his friend really exists, because maybe this is also lying.
Right. Yeah, that brings up something, right? Like, does anybody expect anything in the Harvard Business Review to be true? Like, what's his aim here in writing this article? What is it?
To console everybody that everything they're doing is perfectly acceptable?
Maybe.
Don't go changing. Everything you're doing is right. In the 4th paragraph, I reminded my friend that millions of businessmen feel constrained every day to say yes to their bosses when they secretly believe no, and that this is generally accepted as permissible strategy when the alternative might be the loss of a job. The essential point, I said, is that the ethics of a business are game ethics different from the ethics of religion. There's another weighty, fraught term, ethics of religion. Huh. Mr. Wise, Albert Carr, what are ethics and what is religion? But in that paragraph, so you go to your cubicle farm, if such things still exist, or you go to your, yay, I get to work from home job.
Karl.
Am I being bad?
No. I wish you would.
So you go to you go sit in your home office, and your boss sends you a Slack message and says, we need you to do this. Well, that's different. If you say no to that, you're not being a good employee. That's not business bluffing. He's shifted the category right in the middle of this paragraph.
Well, he did. You have an agreement to do what the boss asks you to do in the business. But I'll also tell you, as somebody who's been making payroll since I was 19 years old and had a number of employees, that we often need to have people who actually do the work that we are directing to be done to tell us the truth about that work. Jenkins, you've got to get this report done by 5 p.m. And Jenkins has done it many times. He knows it can't be done by 5 p.m. He needs to say, listen, I've been working for you for 10 years. It cannot be done by 5 p.m. He needs to not say yes.
Oh, you mean he has a duty to tell you the truth?
Right. In the military, they have this thing. I don't know what they call this, but there's this tradition of when you have a council of war, and you ask everybody for their advice, you ask the junior officer, the most junior person present, to give their opinion first so that they're not influenced, hopefully, by the opinions of their superiors. Management, whether it's military, household, or business, I believe needs the truth. Also, if Jenkins is just like, I don't want to do that report, I'd like to know that too.
Yeah.
And I think it would behoove Jenkins to say it, because there are other reports he could do, maybe for me, or maybe at the other company. Is he doing himself a favor by saying, you bet I love eating this poop, Mr. Jones? Like, no. Where's Jenkins' fidelity to himself at this point? Is all that matters the paycheck? Is that it? Does he have dignity?
It's another big word. You know, what does this do? That's why, for me, the sticking point on this article, but it's a common way of thinking, is that there is public morality and that there's private morality. And I don't think there is.
Well, all business activity eventually reduces down or eventually leads to private activity. Tim Cook, or whatever that wingnut's name is, who runs Apple now?
Tim Cook.
Tim Cook has a meeting with his head designer and blah, blah, blah. 23 months later, the iPhone 14 comes out and somebody actually, an individual, gives some tickets for it and takes it home, you know? It's all ultimately personal.
Well, and it's made by persons.
And it's made by people. And it's made out of tangible stuff in the real world that obeys the laws of physics. Like, you know, you lie about that stuff, you bluff about that stuff, you bet that beam's big enough and the bridge falls down. Like, it's not okay.
Oh, yeah, sure. I remember, oh gosh, this must have been 35 years ago. There was some hotel in Kansas City. The balcony collapsed.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I think the contractors were shorting them on materials. Easy way to make a buck.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Business morality. Nobody expects you're telling the truth with your receipts. You know, I used to do that job. I used to be the guy, when you see the pavement at the shopping mall and they're redoing the pavement, my job for a while was to sit in my car. I got a lot of reading done. Sit in my car, watch them do the work. And then when the asphalt truck came up, I had to intercept the receipt and get a copy of the receipt to make sure that they were putting down the amount of asphalt that the contract required. Because if he could shave off 5% on a big job, that's $100,000.
Right.
Might as well do it, you know? And a bad parking lot's not going to kill anybody.
Maybe it will.
Maybe it will, but a bad I-beam in a hotel might. So it's not private. It's not private. And just because you could get away with it, and everybody expects you to cheat on the quantities because it's construction trades, you know, no, you don't do it. And if you do it, you're evil.
Or if Jenkins says he can get the report done by 5 and Schmidt's waiting on it and he can't get it done by 5.
Poor Schmidt.
Now Schmidt's late for his kid's ball game or whatever. I do not buy the private life, business life distinction that he makes here. I don't buy it. He goes on in paragraph 5. We're going to go paragraph by paragraph in this damn thing like we do everything we do. He said he was talking to one of his friends, and the friend says, maybe that's good enough for some businessmen, but I can tell you that we pride ourselves on our ethics. In 30 years, not one customer has ever questioned my word or asked to check our figures. We're loyal to our customers and fair to our suppliers. I regard my handshake on a deal as a contract, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then he says, if I do say so myself, our ethical standards are of the highest. And then Carr says, because he's a he really was saying without realizing it that he was living up to the ethical standards of the business game, which are a far cry from those of private life. Like a gentlemanly poker player, he did not play in cahoots with others at the table, try to smear their reputations, or hold back chips he owed them. And I wrote under there, BS.
What's the BS?
Business isn't a game. It is a concrete activity engaged in by real people that manipulate concrete objects, real objects in real space, or involve the expenditure of their time and labor for the exchange of money, which is a proxy for other people's labor. Mm-hmm. It's not a poker game. You know, a poker game is a laboratory designed for entertainment and to test people's ability to make false transactions. It's all it is. It's a weird system that is, in fact, only a game. And business isn't poker. It's just not the same thing.
We played poker a few weeks back, teaching the kids how to play poker and how to bluff. And my boy wanted to bluff so badly.
Oh, yeah. It's intoxicating.
And he would bluff. He would just immediately raise
right.
all his chips. And we'd all fold.
Right.
It's like, come on.
Which can be okay. You're buying the blind or whatever. You're buying the ante.
You're bluffing too much. You're bluffing too hard. You have to bluff a little less hard. But that's part of the game. And everybody who shows at that table knows what it is, and they can leave the table, which is an important distinction. You cannot leave easily, I don't think at all, probably, the business game.
Are you going to bluff to people about the potted meat you make? No, the stakes are entirely different. It's entirely different. He's wrong about this. But when I was reading this, I thought, I'm going to give Mr. Carr the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume that he's bright. I'm going to assume that he believes everything he says, and then he's not a dick, And I'm like, how could he possibly have come to this conclusion? I think that, and I alluded to this at the very top of the show, I think that he is describing an American pragmatic way of surviving in inner office, large organizational politics. And he's not actually talking about business where people make things and sell things for money. He's talking about not getting fired. He's talking about making your sales quota. He's talking about all of that kind of stuff more than he is, being an electrical contractor and charging a fair price for putting a new ceiling fan in for a lady.
That might be forgivable. I'm not sure that holds up.
Well, let me defend myself.
Okay, go ahead.
I have been a small business person for a long time, and I have competed with large businesses for a lot of that career. Careers don't exist, by the way. But I often had an advantage against...
That's a big statement.
I know. I often had an advantage when competing against much, much larger businesses because my business was optimized for creating that thing, that widget or that service. And those big operations have an entirely different set of functions inside of them, which often are just as arbitrary and strange as table stakes hold'em poker. And if you're inside that organization and you've got forms to fill out and quotas and meetings and all this stuff, and meanwhile, Hambrick and his 14-man operation are just over there just kicking your pants because you're really not, they really aren't playing the same game. And Carr is writing for the Harvard Business Review. He's not writing for the Small Business Administration's, quarterly free small business magazine. I don't think he's thinking about that.
Yeah, maybe. Except for some of his examples, which I really find bad. I really find it bad. So he's got the job applicant. The applicant was given a psychological test, which included the statement, which of these magazines do you like? It has a list of magazines. And so the applicant decides, well, if I put out that I like Playboy magazine and the New Republic and Ramparts, I don't know what Ramparts is, they might not hire me because they'll think I'm the sort of person that reads Playboy and radical leftist magazines. I guess that's probably what Ramparts was. And so he lies, and he says he picks the 5 most conservative publications. Apparently it was a sound decision, says Carr, for he got the job. He had made a game player's decision consistent with business ethics. And I'm thinking, well, is that the metric that he got the job? Did he steal it from a more qualified candidate? I used to have people come into my office back when I taught in a university that would have done plagiarism. It's an easy thing for your kids to do. Your kids may do it and you don't even know. But you just go and cut and paste, or you rephrase the Wikipedia article rather than writing a paper. And I'd call them out on it. It's such a hassle. You really don't want to because it's paperwork.
Right.
It doesn't change anything. But you gave me 0 for the paper and I'm going to lose my scholarship.
All right.
Good. You should lose your scholarship.
Right.
Somebody else should get it because you weren't worthy, because you cheated.
Right.
Right? It's for merit. This is not poker with playing for nickels.
Right.
He got the job, somebody else didn't.
Right.
By lying about his character.
And I think that the hiring practice is utter rubbish. That calling that question business is bull.
Yeah, it's a stupid question, but
it's a stupid. But hey, they're out there. I've seen those kinds of questions. I've read untold number of books about interviewing candidates, and people do stuff like that. But just because people in the business world do stuff like that doesn't mean that we should conform our ethics to their stupidness.
The next example is a guy who lies about his age. Well, he lied.
Yeah, in the example, the guy's 58, but he looks younger. He's got a little gray hair, so he dyes his hair and lies and tells him he's 45. And Carr says, this was a lie, yet within the accepted rules of the business game, no moral culpability attaches to it. I don't think that's true. I think if people find out he lies, there'll be consequences for him. And he doesn't mean moral culpability. Like, I think you can have moral culpability when you're laying in your bed by yourself with your thoughts. Right? I mean, it's not just you get fired.
That's a very Catholic thought.
Maybe. But nowhere in here does Carr impeach the game. Like, the game can be as corrupt as it. I mean, he has no problem with how corrupt the game is. We have to be as corrupt as we can be, as is necessary for us to be, to meet the game. That's not okay. Our friend John Pascarella is always talking about, in Slack, we're always talking about game theory. How do you win in a certain situation? And Pascarella is really unwilling to entertain that. He wants people to act virtuously at every turn, because he's Aristotelian, right? To act virtuously is to win, right? The pleasant life arises from that. And if you aren't virtuous, you didn't win anyway.
Right, which is why Carr needs to work out what he thinks morality is.
He doesn't know what it is, I bet. He's been dead a while.
Somewhere, and he says, people who make choices, even if you do make choices, it's not... This is in the cast illusions aside part.
Yeah.
It's about 3 or 4 paragraphs down in that. The illusion that business life can afford to be guided by ethics as conceived in private life is often fostered by speeches and articles containing such phrases as "it pays to be ethical" or "sound ethics is good business." I actually wrote one of these articles, got it published. Juvenile. What do they call it? The writing when you're a child?
Juvenilia?
Yeah, I wrote it 20 years ago. But he says, actually, this is not an ethical position at all. It is a self-serving calculation in disguise. And I marked that. Well, Mr. Carr, what is ethics? What do you think it is? I think he thinks it's like religion. Don't eat this meat on this day, or keep holy the Lord's Day, or something like that. Anything that has a positive outcome to you doesn't count as ethical for him.
Yeah, I wrote in here somewhere that he was Kantian there. Here it is, Kantian garbage.
Should we be telling people our notes?
Listen, I don't tell them all of them. Yeah, the example, he talks about this illusion that the business can afford to be guided by ethics. This piece you just read, he's talking about an example wherein a young executive points to a new industry code as proof that his company and its competitors are deeply aware of their responsibilities to society. The industry is self-policing, and the young executive is very proud of that and thinks that's very responsible. But one of the older, more cynical, higher-ups in the industry says, oh, no, we're self-policing because we don't want the government to do it. We know that if we do it ourselves, we'll be more lenient than a regulator would be. And so, being a Kantian, Carr says, it was, in other words, conceived as a protection for the industry, not for the public. So he's not okay with that. He doesn't think that's moral behavior. What's wrong with the industry saying we're more qualified to police ourselves than some wingnut from inside the Beltway? What's wrong with them saying that and undertaking to do that? If you are
a Kantian, you have really a lot of trouble figuring out why anybody should be ethical. In my opinion, for Kant, it's are your actions those that a rational agent can will without contradiction? It's pretty thin gruel. can I universalize my maxim and make it a law of nature? That's the way he tries to sketch out morality without relying on appetites and emotions and happiness. He doesn't want to talk about morality makes you happy. But Kant is an outlier.
He's a spurg. He doesn't understand that people are animals.
I love some bits of Kant. There's some of it that I really like that treat others as an end in themselves.
Yeah,
That's perfect. Well done, Immanuel Kant. He also came up with the nebular theory of star formation, by the way. And he liked mustard and took a walk every morning at the same instant. People set their watches to him.
That ain't bad. You've heard me talk about index funds and the categorical imperative,
Yeah.
If everybody indexed, the market would fall apart.
Kant's not entirely without use, but
No.
you, just because you could will something without contradiction doesn't mean that you want it. It's really thin. I want to do good things because I want to do moral things because it makes me happy in the Aristotelian sense. So when he says it's not moral to do something that leads to good results for you, well, Aristotle would say, yeah, it is. And so would Plato. Well, so would Socrates. That if you are a tyrant in your soul, your life is bad. It's not worth living.
I was just reading The Galleys for our friend Malachi Walsh's new book, Socratic Scribbling, which will be coming out soon. And Malachi's a sneaky dude. He's written this book about how to write, and he butters up and slips a whole bunch of Aristotle to you in here.
I already like it.
Yeah. He talks about Aristotle's list of goods, and he says, if you pursue those goods, then life, therefore, has no further need of pleasure as a sort of adventurous charm, but has its pleasure in itself. The life that pursues those goods. And if that's true, and I think it is, and you don't do that, you're going to be miserable. So Carr is an American pragmatist, isn't he? Seems like it.
If he's thought that clearly about it.
He seems like it. And pragmatism, we're going to have to read some pragmatists. Pragmatists, I think, could accept Aristotle's claims about the good life there. They're like, well, if I'll pursue these goods just because it makes my life good. They don't do it because it's good. They just do it because of the result. That pragmatism it's not good enough. It's thin too.
Yeah.
Did I make a good argument there? That I didn't.
Well, it's thin because it's not the whole of ethics. I don't know how clear Aristotle's on this. Mostly what he's talking about is the virtues that you should have for yourself because they're good for you.
Right. And a life spent in pursuit of those is good and pleasant in and of itself.
Yeah, so he doesn't give you any thou shalt nots.
Right.
But he does say at one point, there are things which are always shameful that one ought never to do.
Right. He likes the Aristotelian mean, except a dusting of rape's not okay.
You can't do adultery moderately.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit of Kant, a little bit of pragmatism, and you get Aristotle. Well, maybe you'd need a little more. I think Thomas Aquinas is the best reader of Aristotle. Mm-hmm. But read that first part of the second part, and you'll get a pretty good sketch of ethics, in my opinion. So if you're doing things that are in your interest, that doesn't make them not ethical.
Right. But see, in a large organization, the individual organization man's interests are almost directly opposed to that of the organization. They're set up that way. It's adversarial. You can go look at any union contract. The businesses aren't set up in a way to try to meet everybody's needs.
Right, and they can't. That's the problem with stakeholder theory.
Yeah.
Is you just can't. There's a practical limit, or what I was saying earlier about your moral responsibility is not universal just because it can't be. Mm-hmm. I can't be responsible for Ivan, the goat herder in Vladivostok. Sorry, Ivan.
Yeah, I used to have a real business with like time clocks and things and buildings and forklifts. Sorry. Yeah, it was rough. And I always wanted everybody to be happy. And I always wanted, well, no, I won't even say that. I always wanted everybody's needs to be met, and it didn't really work out very well. I used to occasionally meet everybody at the time clock on a Friday with their paychecks. I did this for years and years and years until we got that direct deposit stuff. But even after that, every now and then, maybe once a year, I'd stop that and print them out, and I'd meet everybody at the time clock, and I would hand them their check. Have I told this story on the show? And I would say, hey, I really appreciate what you did this week. Here's the money. Can we do the same thing next week? Same deal. And the old timers that had worked for me for 17 years or whatever would roll their eyes. Yeah, I'll see you Monday, And the other ones didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I was like, this is voluntary. If this doesn't meet your needs, if this money's not adequate for what you did this week, let me know. Like, here's your chance. I just offered the deal to you. Here's your chance. They almost never, ever countered me. And I was not bluffing. Like, if I had somebody that said, hey, listen, this is miserable. I'm not getting paid enough for it. Or there's this other thing that I could be doing that would interest me. And I would like, if I do that, I'd like more money for it. I would love that. And they just never would do it. So I tried to set the thing up so that it was a machine that helped meet people's needs, whether it was the customer's need, the employee's needs, or certainly the needs of me and my family. And you can't do that all the time. But this sort of thought that Carr has is pervasive to the point that it's almost impossible to run a business with the idea of being just in mind. And I am not opposed to the ideas of profit or employer-employee relations or any other communist stuff.
Communist.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong about operating a business, one guy having the capital and bringing the customers in and another person bringing the skills in. I don't think that's exploitative, but it's so poisoned at this point with this idea that it's this weird game and it's actually not personal, that your needs don't matter, that even when I offered explicitly to employees dozens of times over the course of over 20 years, I was almost never taken up on it. Somebody will say, well, Hambrick, you're 6'2", and you weigh 240, and you're the boss, and you've got all the power, and of course they can't say anything. What was I going to do? Kick the shit out of them? Like, we weren't going to we weren't going to go to bust knuckles. The worst thing that would have happened, they would have taken unemployment benefits for a time. It always baffled me when I would do that. And nobody said, whatever. And there were other opportunities like that with me.
Mm-hmm. So they were poisoned by this adversarial game mentality and thought you were playing a game.
I think so. One of my best guys who worked for me the longest, loved him very much, still do, haven't talked to him in a while. Right after he started working for me, he came in the office. He said, boy, I don't feel well. I said, oh, boy, I'm sorry to hear that, man. He said, yeah, I just don't feel good. He said, I'm sorry. Aspirin in the first aid kit in there. And I knew what he was getting at, but I wasn't going to have it. And we went like 3 more laps with that shit. And then he left. He left my office. And he went back to his office. And I walked in his office. I said, Mike, are you sick? He said, yeah, I'm sick. I said, why don't you go home? I was like, why are you asking me for permission to go home if you're sick? Like, if you're sick, come in and tell me, Hambrick, I am sick. I can't continue to work like this. And then go home. I'm not your mother. I'm going to trust that if you're sick. I said, now, here's the flip side of that. If you ever lied to me about it, it's on you. And he told that story to every new employee he ever hired that worked with us.
Yeah, I'm wondering what that oil guy would have made of this article. Your favorite?
Oh, Tiger Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Tiger Mike reads Albert Carr. So I'm going to shift, and I'm going to argue with myself now. All right, so I don't like this article very much. It's bugged me for a long time. On the other hand, this is like Odysseus, the crafty Odysseus. So there's this play. We don't read it at OGB just because we can't read everything. It's by Sophocles. It's called Philoctetes. I've mentioned it before, where the Achaeans need to take the city. There's a prophecy that they need this one guy with this bow, but they dumped him on an island because he had a wound and he was annoying. He would just cry about it. He had this uncurable snake bite or something on his foot, and he would just moan all the time. And so they dumped him. Turns out they need to go get him. So it's Achilles' boy, Neoptolemus, who is straight arrow, super honest guy, and it's a crafty Odysseus who get given this job. I don't think there's a satisfactory resolution in the play. Hercules shows up and makes everything better. Spoiler.
Mm-hmm. He does that.
But Odysseus, we need to lie. We need to get him on the boat. We got to win. What good is it to be noble and honest if we don't get what we want?
The problem is wanting the wrong thing, right?
I don't know. I'm arguing with myself now. So you can take consolation in your ethics as you live in poverty because you haven't played the game correctly and other people played it better than you and shut you out of power and access and business. You see what I'm getting at?
Oh, I get it.
It's possible that being honest would make you a loser.
It depends on what game you're playing when you go to the job interview or you try to get the archer on the boat. What do you want?
Well, we want to take the city of Troy.
Why?
Because Agamemnon got us all together, and it's an affront to our inchoate national pride to have Helen stolen away.
Right. So business isn't war. I think there are imperatives in war that are different than business. Am I right?
Business isn't war.
No. If you don't get the contract, people probably aren't going to die. If you don't get the contract, your mother, wife, children, and aunts aren't going to get raped by the hordes. The stakes are not the same.
Let's say it's 1931 or 1932.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get the contract, people are going to starve.
Well,
does that change the calculations?
I don't think so. I believe that truth is a thing. I think that truth maps directly onto reality. And insofar as you deviate from that...
Radical thinking.
I know. And insofar as you deviate from that, you deviate from reality, and it diminishes your chances at success in that thing. You lie about a contract, your chances of going bankrupt go way up.
But what if they don't? What if you can get away with it?
Well, you got greasy that time. Some of our friends talk about taking the ticket, Carl.
Yes.
Some of this business stuff is really wacky. Like, how do you get a major motion picture contract as an actor or an actress? There are lots of beautiful young women with neutral accents from the Midwest who can sing and dance, crack a joke, and cry on demand. And they all want that gig. How do you get that gig? Well, you have to play that game. There is a game that is played. I don't know what it is. I would probably puke if I did. But there is a game there that's different than bidding on contracts and promising delivery dates and quality and so on, like, concrete with, certain slump and whatever.
Well, but in that case, and we're being delicate here, but what's that guy's name? The guy that they finally threw over after loving him for years and years? Weinstein?
Kevin Spacey?
No, the producer. Harvey. Yeah, so Harvey did this sort of thing with the young ladies and got them movie deals. Well, but let's read it under Albert Carr's. It's a poker game, and they all know what the game is, and they all know what the rules are.
It's okay for Carr. Now, I say, don't hate the player, hate the game. Don't play the game. Go find something else to do. You're lovely, you're smart, you're talented, you can carry a tune, you've got the neutral. I don't know, do something else. Go sell pharmaceuticals. I don't know. Maybe that game's gross too. I don't know.
What?
But there do seem to be industries or jobs or gigs where there is what some of us call ticket taking.
Yeah.
And I don't think those are good for you.
I think what Harvey did was no good. Okay.
Yeah. You're not a Harvey apologist.
No.
Do you denounce him right now? Do you disavow?
No. I'm not going to play that game. But if we read it through this article, okay, everybody going into it, if you got called into Harvey Weinstein's office, what did you think was going to happen? And what did you expect to come out of it? You went in hoping to get a movie deal. Mm-hmm. And whatever happened in there, was it a secret? If it was not a secret, then according to the game analogy, game theory, then there was no harm.
Right.
Obviously, clearly there was harm.
Yeah.
which is part of the problem. Game theory, these are people. They're not AIs playing poker.
I do want to say that there is a non-zero number of women that went to the quote-unquote audition and didn't know what the game is. And woe unto them. I feel awful for those people. But a lot of people go and play the game, whether it's trying to get the concrete contract in Jersey somewhere, which is probably not objective and about concrete quality, delivery time, so service after the sale, and price, or the acting gig. Some of those are so gamified, you've got to take, quote unquote, take the ticket, right? And I would wager, I would say to any friend of mine that wanted to be in one of those businesses, that is not good for you and you should leave. Carr would say, no, play the game and cash the checks. I say leave.
And then take comfort in your private morality, which is separate from your game morality. And that's for me, the big sticking point. I don't think it is. And you raise the point that not everybody knows that they're in the game. There's an example he gives somewhere in the middle, talking about the Ralph Nader's book, Unsafe at Any Speed, demonstrates that automobile companies for years have neglected the safety of car-owning families. And I'm going to go to the next page. These men were business game players. Their reaction to Moynihan's attack, that's Senator Moynihan, was much the same as that of the automobile manufacturers to Nader, of the utilities to Senator Metcalf, and the food processors to Senator Hart. If the laws concerning their businesses change, or if public opinion becomes clamorous, they will make the necessary adjustments. But morally, they have, in their view, done nothing wrong. As long as they comply with the letter of the law, they were within their rights to operate their businesses as they see fit. And my note was, did the families in the cars that exploded know they were playing a game?
No, of course not. That's a pat answer, isn't it?
Yeah. I haven't read Nader's book. As an engineer, you do have to make decisions on, you can make a car that's extremely safe. It'll get 1 mile to the gallon.
Yeah, and it'll be extraordinarily expensive.
So you do have to make decisions.
None of the cars that any of us drive, even now if you buy the best Volvo with the best safety rating, is as safe as it could possibly be. I'm not a Pinto or Corvair apologist. That's who Nader was after. The problem becomes, reading Unsafe at Any Speed might be an interesting thing to do for this show, actually.
Humph.
You don't think so?
No, that was a humph of Maybe I mispronounced it.
Yeah, you mispronounced I haven't read it, so I don't know all the particulars are, but I can imagine you and I being on a design team, designing an automobile, only to find out later that something we had done unbeknownst to us caused it to explode more easily than it might otherwise happen, which I think happened with the Pinto. Then the problem becomes if they don't do anything about it. And is that bluffing? Is that Carrian bluffing? No. It's fraud. We have all kinds of other words for that. Manslaughter, right?
What was distasteful, I believe, was, I think I've read about the book. I haven't read the book. Was they know it has problems. They could fix it, but it would cost so many dollars per car. And they were making calculations on how many deaths.
Right.
How many settlements they could pay out for the deaths.
Right. And so they did nothing.
Yeah.
That's not just bluffing in Carr's sense. It's probably manslaughter.
So you go play this poker game, and part of the rules of the game are you could be shot.
Right.
Well, that's different than playing poker. The analogy with poker doesn't hold up because there's not these clear lines. A poker table is its own table. You're only going to lose the money that you bring to it. So it's a closed system. You know you're unlikely to get shot unless you're, what's his name?
Hickok.
Yeah. But you go into, you know what it is. When I engage in business, when I buy products and services from people or try to hire somebody to do something, it's not a closed system.
No, it's not a closed system. And it's not cut and dried. Even the Ford Motor Company Pinto example you gave, it's not cut and dried. They did some math and they figured out that the settlements were cheaper than the fix would be, right? To fix the problem. Well, if you sell enough automobiles, virtually any problem that you can think of is going to be significant, right? Like if we sold 100 million Carlingian Falcons, 100 million of those, we would have a significant number of people that just had a stroke or a heart attack while driving and hit a pole and died.
Mm-hmm.
In the world we live in now, every single one of them, their estates and families are going to bring suit against the Carlingian Falcon. Every one of them. It's just how it works now. Now, what are we going to do? Are we going to come up with a heart attack, grand mal seizure, stroke arrestor system in the automobile? No, it costs too much. It's just not feasible because we have finite resources, finite time, and the car has to weigh under 40,000 pounds, you know? Every single thing that we do in reality has those kinds of trade-offs. And just because we call it business and we denominate some of those efforts in dollars, like dollars are proxies for, you know, real materials or real labor, doesn't really change anything. We built a staircase at our new shop building, Karl.
Mm-hmm.
Not very good at it. And the stairs were too shallow. I had one extra step to get to the second floor. So the stairs are just too shallow. And I'm 6'2", and I feel like I'm walking up like somebody just stacked dominoes or something. I'm just like taking these little tiny steps up there. And then the bottom step was taller than the other ones. So you come down the steps and you do 14 of these steps that are exactly the same height. And then the bottom one was an inch longer, and it just jar your teeth, you know? And I'm like, one of these days I'm going to be carrying like a greasy pig or something down there, and I'm going to hit that bottom step and we're all going to die, you know? So you know what I did? I'm like, is this worth it to fix this? Do I want to go buy some more tube of 12s and spend another day notching all those risers? And do I want to do all this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a business, but that's what you have to do with everything. Just calling it business doesn't mean that it's not real.
Right. But I bet if I go visit, you're going to say, watch that last step.
For sure.
Whereas
well, maybe
you might, unless you've got it in for me. When you buy your Ford Pinto, do you know that it's got a gas tank in the back that tends to go boom in a rear collision?
No.
Are you good with that? I mean, people who buy motorcycles.
That's a good point.
Nobody thinks a motorcycle is safe.
I had a friend who was an ER physician. They called them donor cycles.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a Harley-Davidson store near us, and I drive by it, and they talk to me sometimes. The motorcycles do.
Right.
Then,
loud pipes save lives, Karl.
That's what I've heard. I've seen the ad in the paper selling motorcycle, getting married.
Right. One of my buddies, his son and his wife just announced that they're going to be having a child. And my buddy said, have you put the boat on Craigslist? Yeah. So Carr, just because Carr can find these business predicaments that the Ford Motor Company found itself in, or the armor meatpacking people, or he didn't give that example, but you understand. I mean, just because he can find these predicaments where people have to make compromises doesn't justify his ethics. Now, you've illustrated, I think, and I'll say it again, you've illustrated that, covering that stuff up or knowingly doing nothing about it is definitely wrong. Well, here's another example he gives. He gives an example of advertising. He says, what a man's products were to be advertised in a way that made it sound a great deal better than it actually was. How does Carr know that? Like maybe the Cheese Whiz is utterly delicious and Carl doesn't like Cheese. Like there's nothing we could do possibly to make Carr want Cheese Whiz. We can't tell people things about the Cheese Whiz that aren't true, but I think we can represent that it'll please a lot of people a great deal.
Yeah, advertising's an interesting example. Next time you see an advertisement, and you will, like in the next 2 minutes.
This show is an advertisement for onlinegreatbooks.com.
It is, by the way. Tell your friends. Try to spread our little show if you find this entertaining. And maybe they might go to onlinegreatbooks.com/podcast.
That's it.
And get on the waiting list for the next time enrollment opens and come join us.
Full disclosure, our business is not perfect, Karl.
Should we explain the risks to the people so that they know?
Yeah. We use the United States Postal System priority mail. And if your mail carrier has COVID, your your book might be late.
It might be late. And we have you read Homer and Plato and Aristotle, among others, and it might cause a great sense of dissatisfaction in your soul.
It's true. We had a member quit the other day and sent me an email, said, you guys read way too slow. And I said, all right, beat it. Go read real fast somewhere.
Well, we figure once a month for a seminar, you all have real jobs. At least we hope you do.
Yeah, real ones, not games.
A lot of people have trouble keeping up with the schedule we do keep. So if you can go faster and do a home group, go ahead. Good luck to you.
Please do.
I hope it works out. Yeah, there's some risks in doing this. You might... I can't watch regular movies now. I have to watch completely silly movies. Hallmark, I know they're stupid. Going in, I know they're silly. They're charming and silly, and I don't expect them to be great. But if I'm going to go watch a J.J. Abrams thing or something, it's like I can see the strings now.
From the mind
of the puppets.
M. Night Shyamalan, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, so I can't watch a serious movie anymore. I don't have any interest for that, and it's all your fault. So full disclosure, there are dangers to you should you join us. You probably won't explode.
Feels like it.
So if we be honest with you, we're not playing a game. We're not selling you something that we're misrepresenting. We're not telling you it will increase your net worth by $100,000. No, we're not doing that. Advertising makes all sorts of claims that are, well, they're not even about the product.
Yeah, that really bothers me. We listen to old-time radio shows around here on podcasts. You can go listen to the Jack Benny program brought to you by Lucky Strikes or, whatever. We actually like to listen to a lot of the old kind of hard-boiled detective stories. Johnny Dollar. A lot of those podcasts will just play the commercials, all the whole darn thing, like from the kickoff to the end, and there'll be commercial breaks and all that. And boy, I sure do miss that sort of advertising. Our washing powders will get your clothes whiter at a cheaper price. I don't want to hear how the product will make me sexier. I don't want my commercials like a modern Bud Light commercial. I want it to be about the value.
Good-looking, happy people using the product and being good-looking and happy, as if you will become good-looking and happy by using it.
Yeah. On the Music and Ideas show, we did one on bluegrass, and I played a commercial for Martha White's Flour. And a sweet lady on there says, your biscuits will be taller, and it's easy to use, and it's economical too. Like I could get on board with that.
I was listening to, digging for our other show, the Music and Ideas show. We're going to do a Gershwin episode, and I was listening to, there's a couple of Gershwin's radio shows that exist, and you can listen to them. They were brought to you by Phenament, chewing gum laxative. Studies have shown that the best way to take a laxative is to chew it like gum.
Do you think their studies actually showed, or are they bluffing?
I don't know. If they lied, then that's no good.
Right.
Like, who are the 4 out of 5 dentists? Who's the 5th dentist that recommends sugared chewing gum?
Steve.
But that would be a good thing to talk to Malachi about. What's permissible to do in advertising? Mm-hmm. What sorts of limits do you feel that there are on? Do you think that there are on this practice? Does everybody know that advertising is a game and therefore don't expect? So I don't think they do.
No, and especially when advertisement has moved into the realm of product placement.
Yeah.
I don't think so. So I'm reading Malachi's Socratic Scribbling. We're going to have to read it for this show, I think.
Yes, we will.
He's a sneaky snake, this guy.
One of our hosts, by the way, you could come and take seminars with him.
Yeah, he's way too smart. He's a pain for that. Malachi, I've read this book and I've talked to him a great deal and sat in some of his seminars. But so I'm gonna make some claims about Malachi that he can refute when he comes on the show. But I think I'm right. I think Malachi believes there's this absolute, there's such a thing as an objective truth, and he holds that. But he's an old advertising guy, and he's a writer, and he's Aristotelian too, and Malachi has checklists and step-by-step instructions for how to figure out who it is that you're talking to, what is important to them, and how to convince them of that truth. So I was reading along here and I was like, oh, he's going to be a relativist here. He's going to be a relativist. He's going to be a relativist. He puts a bow on it, though. Maybe he believes the noble advertising lie that sometimes you have to say weird things to get someone to know the real true thing.
Well, saying a weird thing is, I don't think that's a problem. Just drive around, sometimes people put their signs upside down. It's a clever technique. You have to think about it. You can't just let it go into your brain without any thought. You have to, what does that say? Well, now you've consciously thought about it, about Bill's Car Wash.
Here in Oklahoma, we fly the University of Texas Longhorn flag upside down. It's true. That's what I thought you were. I thought you were going for something like that.
No, it's not. It's not a sign of distress or that the republic has fallen. It's just a trick to get you to read the sign, or having the guy dressed up in the T-Rex outfit waving the products out on the corner of the road.
Or how about this? The boogeyman will get you. I don't want you sneaking out at night because you're a little bitty kid and something might happen to you. You might get lost. And I've tried to explain all those things to you. You keep slipping out of your bed and going out the front door at night, the boogeyman will get you.
Well, the boogeyman's real.
Is the boogeyman really a dude with opposable thumbs? Or are you saying that there are dangers out there that you're unaware of, young person, and you need to stay in bed?
Yes.
So, right, but there's not a boogeyman.
No, the boogeyman's a composite. There are many boogeymen.
So if I show you a Budweiser commercial and there's a pool party with lots of good-looking women and a dude with a nice motorcycle and he drinks Budweiser.
See, that's starting to get a little sneaky because, they did this with cigarette advertisements. Heck, our friend Edward Bernays, our friend Edward Bernays was probably one of the people that got my grandmother to smoke. Because suffragettes, torches, what are they called? Liberty torches. That was his advertising campaign. Smoke cigarettes, be free, get the vote. I don't know that my grandma was a suffragette. She smoked like a chimney. And she was the right age. Mm-hmm. You connect your product with happy people doing happy things. And
is that a bluff?
It's not even a lie because you're not telling them that they'll be happy and successful if they smoke Virginia Slims. But you're showing them lots of happy, successful, beautiful people smoking Virginia Slims. And the association is made. And where's the responsibility on that? And are you doing anything wrong? Now, you can't advertise cigarettes anymore.
But it's okay to advertise marijuana in Oklahoma. Marlboro Man? No.
Oh, sure. There's advertisements in Illinois. Cannabis. There was one I saw. You have in-laws. We have cannabis. So if I smoke cannabis, I won't care about my in-laws. Is that a sneaky claim? Is that just the poker game? Not everybody reads these advertisements as critically as I do, and I don't think I read them critically enough. And so do you have a responsibility, I don't know, not to do this sort of thing when impressionable minds are out there? I guess it's all okay because it's part of the game. For Carr, it would be, I think, perfectly okay.
Yeah.
As long as it's not illegal.
Oh, he explicitly says that the basic rules of the game have been set by the government, which attempts to detect and punish business frauds. But as long as a company does not transgress the rules of the game set by law, it has the legal right to shape its strategy without reference to anything but its profits. I'm not loaning that guy a ratchet.
Yeah, towards the end, let's see how he wraps this up. So, for office use only, an executive's family life can easily be dislocated if he fails to make a sharp distinction between the ethical systems of the home and the office, or if his wife does not grasp that distinction. And he tells his story about, well, I had to let Jones go, and the wife is upset. Jones is over 50 and having trouble getting another job. What about his wife and his kids? And then he gives another example about a guy being pressured into making a political donation. Mm-hmm. And telling his wife about it. And she says, and this is another place where a meme responded. So he says, I had to do it. I had to do it because I would have lost the contract. She was silent for a while. Then she said, Tom, something is wrong with business when a man is forced to choose between his family's security and his moral obligation to himself. It's easy for me to say you should have stood up to him. But if you had, you might have felt you were betraying me and the kids. I'm sorry. that you did it, Tom, but I can't blame you. Something is wrong with business. And I wrote, yes.
Chad Carl says yes.
Well, somewhere else he has this line like, sorry, I don't have the thing memorized. This is about 7 pages earlier, right before the cast illusions aside, bold point. It's the businesses complaining, if it's legal, we can do it. We broke no law. We're in a highly competitive industry. If we're going to stay in business, we have to look for profit wherever the law permits. We don't make the laws, we obey them. Why do we have to put up with this holier than thou talk about ethics? It's sheer hypocrisy. We're not in business to promote ethics. Look at the cigarette companies, for God's sake. If the ethics aren't embodied in the laws by the men who made them, you can't expect businessmen to fill the lack. Well, that's probably fair. But then he says
really? Is it?
Well, I don't know. You can't expect the businessmen to be more moral than the culture, can you?
That's not what he says. He says if the ethics aren't embodied in the laws by the men who made them. Look, I didn't get to make any laws. I'm working on it. Like, I've got some written down. I'm hoping to get them.
You got a list.
I'm hoping to get them out there. But no, I think we can expect the businessmen to fill the lack.
That's a big ask.
Sure, it's a big responsibility.
Well, let me go to the next part where I also meme responded. Why a sudden submission to Christian ethics by businessmen would bring about the greatest economic upheaval in history.
Oh, Shada.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would. There's this bit in the movie A Man for All Seasons where Cardinal Wolsey, who is dying, and it's Orson Welles, so he's dying of, he's
diabetes.
He's trying to procure an heir for Henry and says to Thomas More, what are you prepared to do about it? And Thomas says, I pray for it daily. And then Cardinal Wolsey says, you'd like to run the government of England by prayer, would you? And Thomas More says, yes. Yes. Why can't you just be good?
Right.
It would take you combining your public morality, your business morality, and your private morality. And if it made business have to be different, okay. If it made you unable, here's where it gets difficult. If it made you unable to compete with everybody else who's playing the other game, well, it might.
There is, I'll make a pragmatic argument. There is a market for honesty. There is a market for plain dealing. And there is a market for just action. We have people sign up at Online Great Books, and if you read the terms and conditions, nobody reads them. I get it, but if you read them, you'll see that when you sign up, it's a 90-day obligation. We send out more than a couple of books to start with.
We have to do that to keep the lights on.
Yeah, and we give a discount code for the first. I don't get full price for the first 3 months. I can't make any money on anybody at all. Probably 5 months, probably. So we ask for 90 days. But this old boy that said we read too slow, I didn't hold him to that. We let him out.
You can't tell people that.
Yeah, I can. Listen, and here's how I can do it, Karl. This is how it works. I just told you, and I want you to believe me, that I don't make a shekel on anybody really until their 4th or 5th month that they've been with us. Because of referral fees that we pay to referral partners like Art of Manliness, or the discount that you use so we don't charge you full price. Plus we have cost in setting you up as a client, and we send out more than one book with the first shipment and all that, and it's fine. It's great. I'm glad it works that way. If you know that and you want out before 90 days, I call it cheap to let you go. If you're not happy with us, we're probably just not a fit. It's not you, and it's probably not me either. So it's cheap to let them out, actually. What am I going to do? Just keep hitting their credit card and just be a pain in their rump and just create all this ill will, and then have 22 more email conversations with them because they want it out, and I wouldn't, and I'm holding their feet to the fire because they checked a box when they did the checkout. No, it's not the right way to act, and it's not worth the money. Because not everything's denominated in bucks.
But is that really moral, or are you just minimizing your trouble? I'm asking like Albert Carr would ask.
I think it's both, because if I have a contract and I want to hold them to the letter of that contract, I'm just going to be making them miserable for the cost of the monthly subscription. but I don't think it's right. And if I spent some time at the dinner table considering whether I'd done the right thing or not, that's not worth it to me. I'm just not going to do it.
Can I tell you, this is part of the problem with ethics as a field of study. Well, for one thing, ethics classes are pretty useless because they don't make you ethical. Your parents make you ethical. Your upbringing does. Your habits do. If you're screwed up at the beginning, good luck to you. But you're going to have a hard road. But it's just thinking about right and wrong. And lots of ethics classes get hung up on the relativism thing anyway. So can we even say that anything's right or wrong? But let's go past that. Say that we can. It is much easier to figure out what you can't do. Okay? So this is 10 Commandments. If you want to be secular, last 7 10 Commandments. Does anybody really dispute these? I shall not kill, shall not steal, shall not commit adultery, shall not bear false witness, shall not covet. I'm probably missing one. I think the covet's divided into 2. Property and wife. Okay, so don't do those things. All right, that's fine. I won't do those things. What should I do? Positive duty. This is where Kant's useful. Strict duties are generally universal and negative. Easier to figure out. What he calls I think there's a syllable I'm missing, supererogatory duties, the things above and beyond your strict duties. Should I discount that guy's 90 days? Well, do I have a strict duty to do it? No. Should I do it? Maybe. It gets complicated. You have to think about situations and, honestly, benefits to you, benefits to the other person, and you have to weigh benefits. How do you compare benefits to 2 different people? They don't come up in units. Sorry, utilitarians, there's no units for it. Makes it really tricky. So what will happen is people will see this fuzziness in moral thought and say, ha, there isn't any such thing. Mm-hmm. When what they should say is, oh, that's kind of complicated and subject to individual distinctions and situations.
Yeah, and I got enough gumption to go ahead and grasp that nettle, do something about it, make a decision.
Yeah.
Put a stake in the ground.
But it's certainly not private. There's no distinction in that decision for you. You're not thinking, oh, I'm in my owner of Online Great Books role today, and I'm making this decision. No, it's Scott Hambrick making the decision. The whole Scott Hambrick is making the decision, not the part that's in business. I don't think that's a good distinction that Carr makes.
I am a kind of a private person, Karl.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I'm kind of a private person. And I was meeting with a Fortune 500 oil and gas company one time in my other life.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we were who they should have picked. I have been in situations where I didn't think that we should have been picked, and I walked away. I don't want a customer I don't have every opportunity to please. I just don't want them. I don't think it's good for me. I don't think it's good for them. And I don't think I'm going to make as much money in the end. And I'm not interested in losing sleep over some shekels. I have walked away from a bunch of them. I have. And I thought we were the right one. And they said, okay, Mr. Hebert, boy, we sure like what we've seen here, and we appreciate the facilities tour, and I think that we've got a good deal here. And it's our policy that we need to audit your books before we go ahead. Blah, 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 blah. I said, well, I'm not going to do that. And I said, well, it's just a formality. It's just part of our policy. And I said, well, I thank you. I'm not going to do that. Take my papers and pound them on the desk and put them back in the file folder and get ready to walk out. And I said, well, all we need to see. Now listen to this. All we need to see is your profit and loss statement from last year and a balance sheet. He told me to make stuff up. That's what that means. I know what that means. It's not a real audit. He says, all we need to see is a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet. He didn't say he needed to see a letter of credit from my bank. He didn't need to see audited and signed financials from a certified internal auditor. Nothing like that. All we need to see is a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet. Well, I walked off. We didn't do business with them and never did. So I'm like, what are they up to? What are they up to? What is the point So when I was generous in my thought about this, I thought, well, they want to make sure that we don't have a lot of debt and that we're in the financial condition of the size and scale that we could take on a client like this without getting into cash flow problems and so on. They want to make sure that we're still going to be there. If it's a 3-year contract, they want to make sure we're going to be there for 3 years. Okay, fair enough. But we could do that with a performance bond too, probably, or something like that. And then, I think they also wanted to see what my profit margin was. I think they wanted to look at the profit and loss statement and see what the profit margin was. And I think that I've also read My Years with GM by Alfred P. Sloan, and I suspect they wanted to look at those things to see if they wanted to vertically integrate my ass, either buy me or a competitor or get in that business for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I just stepped away from the game. There are clients that you don't have to do all the business. You don't have to take all the jobs. You just need enough, guys.
But you could have made more money.
I'm not sure I really actually could have, because I did pretty good. I don't know that I could have. But that's what the ticket looks like. You want to take the ticket? Give him a financial statement, a balance sheet. Or actually show him the balance sheet and have him choke you to death on the price. I did business with Walmart for a little while until they started doing that stuff. Holy smoke. Unbelievable. I got some Walmart stories we could talk about someday, Karl. I won't talk about them on here. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So underlying all this stuff with Carr is like, he seems to think that business is just life and death. Like you have the deal in front of you and that's it.
Yeah. Let me read a couple of things from the last section of this article under Playing to Win. Some men might challenge the Colbys of business. Colby is the guy that gave the politician a donation because of the shakedown, might accept serious setbacks to their business careers rather than risk a feeling of moral cowardice. They merit our respect, but as private individuals, not businessmen. When the skillful player of the business game is compelled to submit to unfair pressure, he does not castigate himself for moral weakness. Instead, he strives to put himself into a strong position where he can defend himself against such pressures in the future without loss. All right, so the line there, they merit our respect, but as private individuals, not businessmen. Okay, so that's that public-private morality. And then I want to get to the very last sentence, or the very last paragraph. In the last third of the 20th century, even children are aware that if a man has become prosperous in business, he has sometimes departed from the strict truth in order to overcome obstacles, or has practiced the more subtle deceptions of the half-truth or the misleading omission. Whatever the form of the bluff, it is an integral part of the game. And this is where I would highlight, and the executive who does not master its techniques is not likely to accumulate much money or power. Well, if that's the goal, now we know what he thinks. Okay, but is that the goal of ethics? Money or power? Money is an instrumental good, as I think power is as well. It's not the highest good. If you make it your highest good, you're going to end up, I think, in his position saying, well, the ends justify the means. And because I want money and power, then I should present my product in a deceiving way or lie to my workers or to my people doing business with me. It's for money and power.
How does he propose managing a business with 45 employees who act like Carr would have them act?
Well, you couldn't ever believe anything they said.
I don't know that you could do anything. I'm glad he's not my neighbor.
Well, he died in 1971.
Good. But this is Harvard Business Review, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty influential.
Where's the disclaimer at the bottom? Hey guys, this is like Mercury Theater's War of the Worlds. We're just joking. Don't act like this guy. Where's the retraction? Where's the caveat?
I don't see one. Let me look in the footnotes.
I didn't see one.
Nope. So I'm not a big fan of this. If you're going to at me, I think that's the term people say, you're going to give me the Odysseus argument, and I'm probably going to respond, well, was Odysseus happy?
I'm going to respond by deleting and blocking. I'm 46. I've walked the earth like Cain for almost 50 years. I don't care. I'm not going to act like this.
49 and nobody ats me.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm not going to act like this. It's not okay. You can't build anything good and beautiful if everybody acts like this. See, I'm Kantian that way.
Well, that's a different goal. Your goal is the good and the beautiful, and I presume the true, not money and power, which are fine if they're tools of the true, the good, and the beautiful, but
it's true.
It's not that money is evil. It's just that money is not the good.
No. It is an instrumental good. It can be used in service of other higher goods. Holy smoke. How did it'd be interesting to see if the guy had kids, and how he talked to them, all that. Yep. I went and bought a bunch of casters the other day.
Castor oils?
No, wheels that you bolt on something to roll.
I know.
So I went and bought a bunch of casters. Ain't cheap, man. And I went in this store and I bought these. I had a pass low of them. I don't know. I think I bought 16 casters. They're not cheap. So I wasn't happy about that. I wasn't excited about paying for all these casters. And then I go through the checkout. First of all, I had a lot of trouble finding them. I asked 2 or 3 of the hands in there, where can I find the 5-inch swivel caster? And, it took way longer than it should have. And they don't even know where their stuff is. Then I finally got them. I get to this checkout. And the checkout was not a pleasant experience. The hired hand at the checkout was a miserable person and was doing her best to give me that too. Rings it all up, and would you like me to email or print your receipt? She says, and I said, well, print it, please. She hands it to me, and I'm walking out the door. I got 2 free casters on there, and I was already sore-assed about the whole thing. I went back in, and I said, hey, I got 16 of these, there's 14 on here. And you know what she said? Just go on. That's a real squeeze, dude. Those aren't hers to give away.
No.
I'm no saint. I was a little grieved, and I had to twist my own tail a little bit to make myself go back in there and give them another $40. So here I am. I've already, chewed my own lip and twisted my own tail to make myself go in there and do that. And she's like, hey, go ahead. Well, I know they're not hers, and I've owned a business, and I wouldn't want people giving my inventory away like that. So what do? You go to the customer service desk. You say, hey, Karen over there didn't charge me for these. I need to go ahead and pay for them. Now she's in trouble.
You could have told a white lie. You could have said, I noticed these 2 casters were in my cart and they didn't get into the bag, and I don't think I paid for them, and I just want to make it right.
Right.
Would that be morally bad?
No, I don't think so. I think that's all true. You just omitted that she tried to give them away. I went ahead and got them paid for, and none of this stuff's clean. I've got a lot of self-interest here. I want that store to continue to be there, so I'll have somebody other than Amazon to buy things from. I needed those casters, at least a few of them, that day. Prime wouldn't even be good enough. I want them to be in business. So it's not all just pure altruism and idealism and whatever.
You couldn't just do it. That's a overdeveloped sense of morals, I think. It's a disease you need to get rid of. It's your private morality getting in the way of your business.
That's true.
You could probably anesthetize that.
Yeah, I'm not a saint. If I'd have been a little bit more of a hurry or something like that, I've gone through the checkout and they didn't get it checked out, and I didn't say a word. I've done that.
Well, Scott, they price all of that in.
Oh, right. It's baked in the cake. Yeah, that's true. Those fat cats over there at the hardware store. Big hardware.
Yeah. It's not worth their trouble.
Right. Big hardware.
That would be Home Depot.
Yeah, this is not Home Depot.
Look, Home Depot is convenient, but the chances of you finding the guy in there that's going to know the bolt that fits the nut,
right,
are less than if you go to the local hardware store.
Sure.
Or if you don't even know the name of something, you're doing there's this thing, and I need to get one of these things, and you don't know the name. And if you're not a hardware guy, if you don't know the name, you can't get. How will I know it when I see it?
Here's your ball cock, sir.
Ball cock.
I knew there was a name for that. Well, if somebody around here is in business school or maybe a manager or maybe has children, that might be a good one to read and talk about.
Yeah, it's useful. So, did you ever see the movie Billy Madison?
Yeah, I think so.
Adam Sandler goes back to grade
ago.
school, and he's got to pass a test at the end. Well, the bad guy has to pass a test too, so he gets to ask a question to the bad guy, and it's a business ethics question. The bad guy's a lawyer, and he's like, he can't come up with it. He just can't do it, and he just
right.
It's funny. That movie's a guilty pleasure.
Sounds like big, but funny.
It's about as funny as Adam Sandler gets.
Yeah. Well, there's that show.
What are we going to read next?
Pray Without Ceasing. Is that what it's called?
Wendell Berry, a collection called That Distant Land. I will go order it.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, I had a listener DM me in Insta Squeeze, and he said, I think you would love this. But here's what really convinced me. He said, it's only 50 pages. That's what really convinced me. Actually, Wendell Berry. I'm always game for some old WB. It's from his collected stories about the Port William people called That Distant Land. He published that thing in 2005. Let's see here. The story is Pray Without Ceasing on page 38 of that little book. So pick that up and listen to that. Yeah, if you listen to it, yeah, read it, whatever. We'll be talking about that one on the next one. And like Karl said, tomorrow we're going to record a show for the Music and Ideas podcast covering
George Gershwin.
George Gershwin. I love George Gershwin. I almost certainly cry. I will almost certainly cry. Does he do that to you?
Depends who's singing it.
Oh, the instrumentals get me. Yeah, the instrumentals get me.
Don't give everything away for free. They have to go to the other show.
Which is also free.
Maybe our business model needs some revising.
Yeah. Like it's a 90-day obligation, which really isn't an obligation. If you bitch enough, I'll let you out of that. And then the shows are free.
But in payment for our free shows that, I've been reading Gershwin I got a biography. It's about 1,000 pages. I'm about 250 in it of Gershwin. The guy only lived 37 years. How could there be so much? So we're putting a lot of work into making good shows.
A lot of living.
We love doing it. We would appreciate it if you could help us to grow. Podcast market is saturated these days, and the big guys are getting into it, which makes the little guys, whose podcasts are probably better, almost certainly better, makes it harder for people to find us. So if you could help us and say to your friends, hey, you like music, or hey, these guys talked about this book, this is interesting, and just hand it along to them, that would be a help to us, because it helps us when you do that.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to promote these. I don't know what's going to happen, but what I do know is this podcast market's just not going to be the same here in a year, Karl.
Yeah.
I think what we should do is we'll move to shortwave, and we'll broadcast this at midnight Central Time on shortwave.
Can we talk about aliens?
That's what I want to do. I want to talk about nothing but conspiracy theories and aliens. And then we'll announce a P.O. box address on the shortwave broadcast, and you can mail a $10 bill, no checks or anything, a $10 bill to my P.O. box, and I will send you a cassette tape of that show.
You'd have to get a cassette player.
Right. But think of all the money.
What town would the P.O. box be in?
One near me.
No, I think it should be an obscure one.
Oh, well, everything is Carroll Stream, Illinois.
I've been to Carroll Stream.
Yeah, everything's Carroll Stream, Illinois.
Carroll died, by the way, just recently. The lady that town was named after.
I would have thought she'd have been dead a long, long time.
Well, she was old.
Yeah, I've wanted to do that for a long time. I love Jerry Clower, Karl.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go listen to any?
I did. I need an interpreter, though.
Yeah. He's got a story about how he got where he was with that comedy stuff. Did you listen to that? Him talking about being a fertilizer salesman?
No, I didn't get to that one.
he sold fertilizer. And and he traveled a lot all across the South and sold, huge quantities of fertilizer for agricultural purposes. And he would do any speaking engagement he could get in order to sell fertilizer. He would talk to the Rotary Club or Ladies Auxiliary, anywhere he could go to get in front of people and maybe sell a little urea or whatever. And he would and he said, I would speak and they would applaud and then they wouldn't have me back. And then he said he eventually started telling these stories, and then they'd remember his name, and then they'd have him back. And he said whenever they needed fertilizer, he was there to relieve their pain, he said. And he would sell them that fertilizer. He did one of those talks in Amarillo, I think is what he said. No, it was Lubbock. One of the guys who owned an AM radio station in Lubbock said, boy, this is great. I got some recording equipment. You come down, tell these stories, I'll record it, and I'll sell those albums. And if it makes any money, I'll give you some. So they did, and he sold 8,000 copies of this, just going to like Rotary clubs and telling them, hey, if you enjoyed my stories today, mail a $5 bill to P.O. Box, blah, 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 Lubbock, Texas, and I will send you an album of my stories. He sold 8,000 copies like that.
Wow.
And Decca Records caught wind of him, and they flew to his town, and he found out that they recorded Loretta Lynn and Ernest Tubb, and he says, I will sign with you. And then sold a lot more records. Anyway, yeah, so maybe that's what we'll have changed to. We'll sell vinyl records and cassette tapes out of a P.O. box.
Vinyl records to get the hipsters.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Did you hear how the hipster burnt his tongue?
How, Carl?
He drank his coffee before it was cool.
Yeah. Well, there's another one of these damn shows. We're going to read Pray Without Ceasing by Wendell Berry. We'll do that for the next show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Go to onlinegreatbooks.com and see what we are doing there. We've got a whole bunch of stuff. Katie King just sent me what we've got coming up here just in January. Euclid Book 1 seminar starts. We've got Tolkien seminars. We've got 2 of those, the Western Fellowship and the Eastern Fellowship. We've got 2 different groups of people working on that. A group of people reading creation myths, Calculus for All by Connor Olson. Some seminars on pedagogy. And in addition, just that Homer and Aeschylus and all that great book stuff we normally talk about. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I was thinking how the advertising would be. But wait, there's more.
That's true. Yeah, do that. Go leave us a review. Send a copy of this show to somebody else. Put it on an 8-track. Send it to your grandma. And we'll talk to you guys next week.